Hello, today we're going to talk about one aspect of consumer behavior called framing or reframing. What is it? Well, reframing is the ability to change how we're perceiving a product to make a more positive assessment of it so that we're more likely to buy it. So we're not changing the product, we're changing how that product is perceived, okay, that product or service. So we're changing how people feel about it emotionally. And it's based on the simple idea that we all have cognitive biases. What I mean is, we all have certain ways of thinking about different parts of our lives and different experiences, whether negative or positive. And this goes back to caveman times, right? So we want to avoid pain, we like pleasure, and therefore our decisions are based, based on those prehistory decisions about trying to avoid being killed, or and then trying to find pleasure in our lives. So in the modern world, we are inundated by brands and experiences, and it's overwhelming, and we tend to ignore what's going on around us unless it's based on biases that we already have. So that the biases, they help us or hinder us to think of things in a certain way. And for a product manager, when you're trying to sell a product, if you can't overcome those biases, your product might fail. So framing or reframing your product message, the brand of that product, is an important tool to help change the perception of your product from the consumer. Okay, so as human beings, we have emotional triggers. We react to, as I said, we want to avoid pain, we want to seek pleasure. And if the way your product is being marketing is causing a negative reaction, then clearly negative emotional triggers are being fired and people are going to avoid it. Okay. What we want to do is change the perceived value of your product to enhance it so that you can sell more at the end of the day. And just to give you an idea of what we're talking about, let's, for example, there's the price framing. Okay, so if you have a product that's high price, let's say you're trying to sell a course for $1,000 or £1,000, whatever it is. Instead of saying it's £1,000, you'll see that a lot of companies will say, "Oh, that's XXX per day for the year," okay, or that's the same as a cup of coffee every day. All right. So what they're trying to do is change the perception about how expensive that product is, but to a point where actually this is affordable. I can sacrifice a coffee a day to pay for this product. So it's all about changing your perception. Let's talk another example. Let's talk about health foods. Okay, so a health food might say on their packaging, this is 99% fat free, or has 1% fat. Okay, so the 99% fat free is a more positive message generally for people who are trying to eat and consume healthy foods than even a 1% fat. Even though it's only 1%, you're still mentioning the word fat, okay, which has a negative connotation. So it's an interesting example. If you look at it rationally, it shouldn't make a difference, but it does. And of course, this is not applicable for everybody, but this is generally accepted. Fast food, going back to health again, we all know fast food's bad for you if you eat it all the time. But if you could reframe the message to say it's family friendly, convenient food, then that's a more positive message. And people are affected. You're triggering an emotional response about family. It's friendly, so you can imagine a family, they're too busy, they can't be bothered to cook, they're going to order fast food. Okay, so you're trying to, because of the convenience factor, etc. You reframe the message, but the positive side of it is more, is less, is the positive reaction is stronger than the negative reaction of eating unhealthy food. Okay, so that's a good example. And so we have lots of different strategies around reframing. There's the price one we talked about. Do we want to stress a loss or a gain? Generally, it's better to stress gains, but it does depend on the product and the service. Sometimes I think people generally like to avoid pain more than gain pleasure, and that seems to be based on the evidence that you read about. Social proof framing. So if you can say that thousands of people are already using your product and you have social proof, testimonials, etc., then people are more likely to buy it. You have emotional framing, so you can connect into people's emotions about family, love, money, pleasure, etc., etc. You try to change your messaging to take example. Yeah. So for that one example of that would be, say, a mobile phone plan where instead of saying unlimited data, your message is staying connected to the family all day. Yeah. So that's a more positive message than a bland unlimited data message for a mobile phone plan. And let's say you had a candle, it had a perfume candle, and say, nice candle with nice smells. Instead of talking about that, you would say, creates a wonderful, warm and friendly atmosphere and cozy atmosphere in your house. You're reframing it to make it more attractive, to hope that you would buy more of those candles. So let's dive in a little bit more detail. Here's a quick presentation about it. So as we said, we're trying to change people's perception of product. Okay, so it's a behavioral strategy that marketers use to change the perception of how people feel about their products. It helps shape how consumers consume information, interpret information. Okay, and if you do it in the right way, it definitely leads to more sales for your product. With respect to consumer behavior, it's about how you're branding your product or service, even your company or you, in a more positive light to influence interpretation. And as I said before, this is rooted in cognitive behavior from probably when we were back in prehistory. But it's based on a theory called prospect theory by Tversky and Kahneman. And you can look that up to see all the theory behind it if you so wish. But what we're more concerned today is about how can you use this to practically help your business. Why does it work? Well, because we're not rational. Human beings are not rational. We make decisions based on emotions, based on previous experiences, based on biases. So how we frame a product affects how we perceive it, and the risk of buying that product, its value, and the emotional response about using that product. So for example, as it says here, saving $5 will feel different from avoiding a loss of $5. Now, depending on what product or service you're doing, you would choose the right message. But generally, saving is a more positive message compared to avoiding. Okay, but it's going to depend on the product and service. So what types of reframing techniques do we have? We mentioned a few before, but we have the gain frame. Highlight the benefits of your product and channel into consumers who wish to avoid risk. Okay, then you have the loss, the fear of pain, right? So you're trying to motivate people who are seeking risk-taking behavior because the reward could be higher than the potential loss. Okay, then another type is based on time, right? So if you say that your product is scarce, or it's about to run out, or there's a limited number of these products, you're reframing it to give it a sense of urgency and changing people's perception of it. The value frame we talked about, how can you demonstrate that your product adds more value? Okay, that might be related to customer service, the price of the product versus the benefits it gives, etc. And then there's the goal frame, right? Why would people want to buy your product? What is the problem they're trying to solve? So if you can tap into that problem and show and change your messaging to show that you can solve that problem, then your product is more likely to sell. So in marketing, reframing is used to position the product. It's used to create urgency and exclusivity, like I said. And depending on how you package the product, everything from the colors in the packaging, the messaging on the packaging, how you priced it, how you deliver it, all of these will affect, and you need to be very careful. And this is reframing is a subset of your brand. Okay, so it has to obviously fit in with the brand of your company, but most importantly, it has to fit in with the perception of the consumers you're targeting, that it will generate a positive response. So here's a typical example: pet food, right? So instead of saying that this pet food is bland, you try to be more positive. It's flavorful, it has good ingredients in it. It's healthy for your pets. You can try price reframing by packaging into combinations, into combo packs, and how you position the product in your store for people to buy also will change the perception of whether people will buy it or not. Then we have, how can we disrupt habits, right? So how can we nudge people from bad behavior to good behavior? So how can, we have these unconscious biases. So how do we change people's bad habits or good habits to encourage them to do more things? So an example here they've got is cereal, okay? And you might remember there were a lot of adverts in the past about showing that cereal is not just for breakfast, it can be for every day. I mean, I don't know about you, I eat cereal any time of the day, but there was a perception when I was a kid that cereal was only for breakfast, and it was strange to eat it, after breakfast. But now it's very much treated as an all-day snack, okay? And I still do it. I still eat cereal at all times of the day. It has to be ethical. If you're reframing something, I mean, it has to be ethical, but it doesn't always be ethical, okay? People are human beings. They like to manipulate and try to get you to do things that you don't want to do. So you must be, reframing should be transparent and not manipulative, but in reality, that's what happens. So, but if you want your product to be perceived in a positive way, it should be transparent and non-manipulative, okay? Focus on the positive side of your product, because you need to build trust. If you build trust over time and authenticity, people will come back to buy your product again, because it's part of your branding, right? It's a fantastic message. So it's really important that you're consistent with this. But you will see examples of very bad ethical reframing as well, so be wary of those. And reframing is generally used in adverts, okay? So, you can change the messaging in your advert. You can change the colors of your brand, etc. The storytelling, the consumer experience and education. You really have to review everything you do and try to think back to what problem are you trying to solve for the consumer to buy your product, and what's the best way of reframing messaging to enhance that so that people will buy more of the product. And so, to summarize, reframing is a tool to influence behavior. It changes the perception of your product without actually having to change the product, and should lead to better decisions and engagement, i.e. people buying more of your products or services. Okay, so that's it for this video. We're going to be talking about many other different types of consumer behavior and how to take advantage of it. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll be back soon.